Hello. Hello, everyone. If you've just joined us, this is the WCA webinar series. We'll be starting in about 20 or so seconds. We're just going to let participants log in. Everyone knows that there's always those few technical challenges that you have. So it won't be long now. Let's see how many people are coming in. Still give them a few more seconds. And almost there. All right, I think we've probably got enough who've managed to log in, and the rest will probably just keep joining us as it goes along. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ruth Harris. I'm the Executive Officer at Wine Communicators of Australia. Thanks for joining us for this month's webinar, which is on data-based decisions and using Wine Australia's free market insight tools. We're coming to you from the land of the Kaurna people in South Australia, and we acknowledge that the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you are all working today as well, and their strong connection to the country and to the seasons of the land. The content today will take about 45 minutes, and so there will be time for questions at the end. As always, if this is your first webinar with us, you won't know this, but everyone else will. If you look down the bottom of Zoom, you've got a chat box and you've got a Q&A box. We ask you to put all of your questions for Angelica in the Q&A box. Use the chat box for technical issues, like if you can't hear somebody or something like that, but use the Q&A button to keep all of your questions, because that way those questions are recorded for us after we close the webinar, and we'll be able to get back to you with any remaining questions if they aren't answered. So this webinar is recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to you automatically after the webinar. So our speaker today is Angelica Crabb, who's the Senior Analyst for Market Insights at Wine Australia. Angelica has been with Wine Australia for a decade, and before that worked in the grain industry, so always in agribusiness. She has a degree in economics and also a Masters of Business Administration. Now, we all know that storytelling and the most effective PR is always based in facts. Sometimes you need to hunt down the best facts to support your story and to enhance your credibility. So what we're going to learn today is how we might do that. Angelica will present on the full range of interactive tools that Wine Australia has available on their website, some of them completely free and completely accessible to anyone. And so that will help, that's to help support businesses making good decisions and elevating your brand storytelling. And the best news is, yeah, it's mostly free. So thank you, Angelica. I'll hand over to you. Remember to put your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen.
Great. Thank you, Ruth. As she said, my name's Angelica. I'm Senior Analyst here with the Market Insights team, and today I'm going to show you our tools. So let me just share my screen. Yeah. And okay, so hopefully you can see that. Okay, so what we do as a market insights team is, in very simple terms, we're sort of a data hub for the Australian wine industry. And in order to access what we've got data all the way from supply to demand, consumer insights. To access our data, the best place to go is our website. So today, I'm going to be spending most of today on the dashboards and calculators section and showing you everything that's available there. But just quickly, we've also got a bunch of other reports, market insight reports, import reports, consumer insight reports here in this section here. And then we've got analysis on wine exports, on crush, on wine production here in this section here. So please go check those out if you are looking for some more analysis and commentary. But today we are going to spend the day on dashboards and calculators. Now, I don't have time to go through all of them in great detail today because there are 8 of them. But on the right-hand side on this page, you've got tutorial videos and articles that will give you some tips and tricks on how to use the dashboards. You can also email us by contacting us on marketinsights@wineaustralia.com. That's at the bottom of the page. Or you can book an Ask an Analyst session with us. And how that works is, because some people don't realize, what you can do is you can click this button and it actually opens up a page where you can book a session with us. And what happens is it puts a Teams meeting in your inbox, in your calendar, and it puts a Teams meeting in our calendar. And then we can chat about, maybe you have just a quick question, maybe you just want 15 minutes, maybe you have a longer discussion you want to have, or maybe you want a dashboard training session, sort of like what I'm doing today, but more tailored to yourself. So you can do that, and then you can pick a time that works for you. Give us some information about what you'd like to discuss and book it in. Okay, so that's a service that we offer to anyone if you want to discuss market insights. So give that a go if you have any questions after today, if they didn't get answered. So over the last few years, we have been spending a lot of time developing these tools to bring insights to your fingertips so that you can access it 24/7 wherever you are. You don't have to wait for a response from us. It's self-service. We designed them to be sort of cover 80% of queries. So as always, if you can't find what you need in these tools, please contact us. Chances are we can help you out. So as I said, we don't have heaps of time, but I'm going to go, there's three of these tools that I'm just going to quickly go over. If you have any questions about them, pop them in the Q&A and we can come back to it at the end. And then there's 5 other tools that I'll spend a little bit more time on. And the first one of these is the Wine Geographical Indications Dashboard, which is actually an interactive map that we've got of all the GIs in Australia, all the wine regions, and it's got the data from the latest vineyard scan, which was back in 2019. So you've got all the vineyard areas in there as well. So I've actually got it preloaded here somewhere. So let me get to it. Here we go. So if you click that button, it launches this interactive map, which I think is really cool. So let me just move my camera. Okay, so if you want to go to a region and have a look where the boundaries are, where the vineyards are, just type into this box here. And we're going to go to Clare Valley. So what it's going to do is it's going to zoom, which I find really cool, into the region, right? And so it's going to show you the actual legal boundary of that region. It's going to show you where the vineyards are, and it's going to give you the area of the region, the vineyard area, the average crush, and some climate statistics as well. So that just helps you, again, be informed about your region or possibly your brand's region, etc. You can print a version of this as well so that you can use that in your collateral, use it in your presentations, etc. So that's just a quick little intro to that tool. The other tool that I'm just going to show you quickly is the grape growing cost calculator. That was developed earlier this year, actually. So it's relatively new, so you may not have seen it before if you're familiar with our tools. It is, however, very targeted towards the Riverina, Riverland, and Murray-Darling Swan Hill. So it's more relevant to you if you're in the inland regions. But I'll show you how to use it quickly because it is so simple. It doesn't take very much time. So what this calculator does is, using just a few little inputs from you, it's going to spit out an estimate of your costs. So your variable costs, your fixed costs, etc. So I've just got some pre-populated things in here. Just as an example, you're going to be asked for your area, your tons, If you're interested in why am I being asked these things, there's more information if you click on that on each page to explain why this is important in determining your costs. So you've got area and tons, the way your vineyard is operated, is it employees, owner, operator, or contractors? What's the type of season? Was it high disease pressure or low disease pressure? So think of the season you're trying to model here. Now I know this is not very realistic, but it's just an example. The amount of your own water you applied versus the amount of temporary water you applied. And then there's some optional things at the end that you can add, such as debt or lease costs and your income. If you want to see what your estimated profit is, put in your income as well. So what happens then is that you get to this results page. And so on the left-hand side, you got everything that you just put in. On the right-hand side are your results. And so you got your variable cost, total per hectare and per ton, and the share of the total, your fixed cost and your overheads. If you want more detail on how this breaks down, you can click on the down arrow. And you can see how your harvesting costs break down, your pest and disease management, water costs, etc. For your fixed costs, you can see your insurance, your rates, and of course, overheads as well. Then you've got your total cost of production and then your profit. Obviously, this is just using some dummy numbers, but it just gives you, an idea, an estimate of what you're looking at. You can also change your cost variables here on the left-hand side and recalculate. So things like cost of harvesting, your fuel per liter, et cetera, and your interest rate, you can change that and recalculate. So again, it is tailored towards the inland regions, but it's just a new tool that we've got that I highly recommend you have a look at, just if you're modeling some of those cost scenarios. Okay. We're going to go back to the dashboards and calculators page. And I'm now going to show you one of our other dashboards. So the Great Price Indicators dashboard is also more tailored towards the inland regions. It was developed a couple of years ago now, and what it does is it brings together 21 different indicators from 12 different data sources that all relate to how wine grape prices move. So it's got an arrow on it that shows you sort of the expected direction of grape prices next year in the inland regions. I'm not going to talk about the arrow too much today. This is the arrow here. But if you are interested in finding out more about the arrow, we've done numerous articles on it, but there's also an information page where you can go read on how it's determined, what it means, what it doesn't mean, etc. So even if you're not from the inland regions, there are some interesting data sets that are on here that are applicable to anybody in the Australian wine industry. So you can filter here on red and white versus and the top varieties from the inland regions. So you've got stock to sales ratios on here. Obviously, that's total. You've got other data sources such as the CIADI bulk wine grape prices. On here, the dashboard is organized into 5 different pages for all the indicators. So if you go to export demand, you can not only get export data from Wine Australia, but you can also get exchange rates and freight rates from Australia, which is quite good to have. You can see here that the freight rate to the UK and North Europe has really increased over the last year. And on the domestic demand page, for instance, not only is there retail data, but you can also get the Australian CPI, Consumer Price Index, with wine compared to all groups and to other alcoholic beverages as well. On the global context page, you can have a look at total global wine consumption, commercial versus premium, and you can look at the consumer confidence index. So it's just some really good indicators there that are not just applicable to the inland, but to everyone. And so just to help you be more informed in which direction the industry is going and what headwinds or tailwinds there might be. So that's the Great Price Indicators dashboard. just go back again to our favorite page, back to dashboards and calculators. Okay, so the next dashboard I'm going to go through is the export dashboard. Now, this is one of our one of the dashboards that's been around the longest, so you may have already seen this, but hopefully I can give you some tips and tricks on how to best use it. We built it back during COVID, launched it in 2021. And it houses all of our export data from the Wine Australia licensing and approval system. So if you're an exporter, you'll know that you'll have to put in your shipment permits, your product approvals when you export wine. So all of that data is available here. We've got data going back to 2015 here, so full 10 years. And what's the power in this dashboard is really all of these filters. So you can customize this to what you want and really get down into the nitty-gritty to help prove a point, or to help you see where the opportunity is, or to give maybe your customer a good story, or yeah, to see where you're placed, maybe some benchmarking. So what you can do, I know many of your wineries, so you're based in a region. Maybe you want to see how your region's exports are going. So use this filter here. So this is your GI on the label of the wine. They are organized by state where possible. So obviously some regions that doesn't work, like Southeastern Australia, doesn't go into a state. But everything else, so say you're interested in a Western Australian region, excuse me, you can choose, say, Margaret River. Okay, and now the whole report is going to filter on Margaret River. So it's going to give you the latest year-ending results, and the latest one is June 2025. So we'll always default to that. And now you'll get a nice little snapshot of how Margaret River exports are going, if it's got Margaret River on the label, right? Now, say you're interested and you really want to dig deep, and you have a look at the varieties here. You go, Shiraz is growing. I wonder what's driving that. So you can click on the chart to filter. Let's do that. Like that, and that'll filter everything on the page again. And just click again in the chart if you want to get rid of that. So, but what you can do is use these filters at the top as well. So say you go Shiraz. And one thing that people may not know is that you can actually select more than one thing by holding the control button on your keyboard. So say I want to look at Shiraz and Shiraz blends. Just hold your control button and it's going to select both. And now it's going to filter the whole page on Shiraz and Shiraz blends from Margaret River. So you can have a look at that. You can see, oh yes, mainland China, driving that, but also the UK, Singapore, Canada as well, growing for Margaret River Shiraz. And you can see the long-term trend here. So just a good one to know how to use. If you want to erase just one thing, so clear this filter here, use the eraser kind of icon that pops up when you hover over it. And just click on that and it'll erase that and you'll go back to just looking at Margaret River now. If you want to clear all your filters, just press the reset filters button and it'll reset everything to total. You can flip from between volume and value as well. If you're more interested in volume, it'll default to value, but you can swap it. So another thing you can do is just get a snapshot for a particular market, for instance, as well. So you can start typing in here and get the United Kingdom, and then you'll get exports to the UK, for instance. And you can see kind of the long-term trend and by price point. What's great about this dashboard and many of the other dashboards that we've got is that you can download the data. So say you're really interested in this data, but you want to take it away and do something with it. You want to, put it in your own presentation, in your own format. You want to do some analysis. What you can do is you can download this by pressing the 3 dots that come up and then export data. What happens is you get an option to do that here, and then you'd press export and it would download an Excel file for you. So that's the kind of basic use of this dashboard. Just quickly highlighting a couple of other pages for you. On the exporter profile page, you can actually get the number of exporters to a certain market. So that's just a good one if you want to know, how many exports are actually going to this market. Are we one of many, or are we one of a few? The other one is the export table, which will show you pretty much exactly what you've got on the overview page, but it's in table format. So it's got a lot of the same filters, but again, makes it just a little bit easier to download a lot of data if you want to go away and do your own analysis, which I know some of you do. And then there's a state reporting page. There's quite a bit of demand from, state wine associations or state government to show, what's our share? How are we doing versus everybody else? Of course. So this is where you do that. We've pulled together everything that's possible to use to report by state. We've pulled together into one area of the dashboard. So if you want to look at how the different states are doing versus each other, the number of exporters from a state, label claims with that state on it. You can also do some benchmarking here where, let's say we choose a state. Here, South Australia, for instance. What you can do is you can see all the GIs from that state, but you can also see the top 5 markets and how that's going. Top 5 varietal label claims, and you can change this to have a different wine style. So if you want to go between red, white, etc., and then price points as well. So that's the export dashboard. You can print a version of this, a PDF. And that goes across most of the dashboards as well if you want to take that away and show that to someone who may not be able to use the dashboard. So that's the export dashboard. Please go have a look. So now that you've looked at how Australian wine is doing to these markets by variety, by price point, by region, you might want to take it a bit further and go, okay, I'm really interested in this market. How is that doing as far as wine consumption? Is it right for me? Is it declining? Is it mostly premium? Is it commercial? You might then want to have a look at the Market Explorer. And this is the one dashboard that you actually have to be logged in to get to. You can see that at the top here, I am logged in to my account, and you have to have a levy payer or exporter access account to get to this. So that's the only one that you have to be logged in for to use. Okay, and what this dashboard has is wine consumption data across the top 40 most attractive wine markets in the world, according to IWSR. So a lot of this data is from IWSR, and we have a license with them to put the data in here. And it opens up on this chart, which we call the bubble chart. And it's just a really good way of seeing at a glance where the growth is as far as wine markets. And so on the x-axis, you've got the historical growth, and the y-axis, you've got forecast growth, right? And so in the top half of the chart, you're going to have the markets where it's expected to be more growth, right? And what you'll notice is that there's a lot of smaller wine markets up in this top half. And a lot of the Asian markets are up in the top half as well. So that's where the growth is expected to come from. The other thing you'll notice is that the bottom half, where there's less growth expected, is your bigger wine markets. So your US, Germany, UK, Canada. And when I say size, the size of the bubble is the size of the imported wine market by value. So you can hover over a bubble, and it'll tell you what the retail value is and the historical and forecast CAGR, which is a compounded annual growth rate. So it's basically an average growth rate over 5 years. So it just gives you a little bit of a snapshot. You can tailor this to commercial or premium. When we say premium in this dashboard, we mean above US $10 per bottle retail. In general, that's what it means. So if you click on premium, you see the bubbles move. Maybe you want to look at commercial, which is below that $10 and see what's happening there. So it's just a good little snapshot to give you an idea. Now, if you've had a look at that and then you want to then dig into a market, this is the page that's for you. So this is probably the most useful page on this dashboard. And it's going to give you a really good overview of a wine market. So say you are looking at Canada. Is Canada a good opportunity for me? What's going on in Canada? So it's going to give you wine market characteristics here. So Australia's share, how much is imported, what's the average value, as well as some economic indicators. So we've got exchange rates coming in here from the RBA. We've got consumer confidence. We've even got the corruption index score, which you may not know what that means, but what's great is that you can hover over this I, and it'll tell you what that actually means. So 0 meaning highly corrupt and 100 meaning very clean. So Canada doing pretty well there. And then you can scroll down and have a look at these charts. And what you can do is hover over the chart and it'll give you some more information. So you can see here the volume and value of total wine consumption in Canada. Volume's been declining by nearly 3% over the last 5 years, whereas value has been growing, so premiumizing. And you can see that here, that commercial wine is really on a downward track, whereas premium wine is pretty flat, right? And you can also get your adult per capita wine consumption, on versus off-premise sales, and wine versus other alcohol. So it just gives you a really good overview of what a wine market is looking like. And this IWSR data is updated once a year, whereas exchange rates and consumer confidence we do update every quarter. Now, just quickly going over the couple of other pages you've got here. If you want to compare markets, this is where you'll go. And basically, this is a table that you can sort using the columns. So right now it's sorted on forecast growth. And so you can use any of these other columns. Say you want to see where does Australia have a high share of premium imports of these markets. So New Zealand comes out on top there, followed by Malaysia and Hong Kong. And wine share of total alcohol, you can have a look at as well. Let's see. Of course, Italy, France, Portugal come up on top there, and we can filter it the other way. Vietnam down the very bottom, as well as India. So just helps you with your market research a little bit. You can flip this to value as well. You can have a look at value, and you'll also get the average value here. So you can compare Australian average value versus total as well. If you want to maybe only look at a certain group of markets, you can use the filter. Again, press Control on your keyboard, and it will then, let's get all the Asian markets here, and we can just compare the Asian markets. So, and lastly, you got market competition. And this is to see in a wine market, who the different players are and at what price points, but you can also flip it to look at a country of wine production. So do a little bit of competitor analysis if you want. So for instance, looking at the market of consumption, here's Australia, right? So here's our top imported wine countries of origin into Australia. A little tip for beginners is that you can click on this chart here. Say you're interested in French wines in Australia. This is the price points now that French wine is being sold at in Australia, right? And then again, if you want to clear that, just click it again. Okay. And then if you flip that just to country of wine production, you're now looking at Australia as a wine producer, right? So you've got our top markets. So if you want to do, say you want to do a little bit of competitor analysis and have a look at French wines, for instance, you can see what price points French wines being sold at and what markets, etc. How much is being exported versus consumed in their domestic market. So that's the Market Explorer. So it should give you a really good overview of the top wine markets in the world, and where the opportunity might be, and what the market dynamics are. All right. So you've used the export dashboard to get a good idea of how Australian exports are doing, maybe in your region, maybe your price point. You've used the Market Explorer to get a good idea of, what the market dynamics are. The last tool that is related to export on here is the FOB to retail calculator. Now, this tool has been around for a while, but we do constantly add to it and update it. So please come back here, even if you maybe have downloaded it in the past, come back here every few months and see if there's a new version. Because we do add markets. You can see how we've got quite a few here. And what you do is you click this and it downloads an Excel file. So you do have to have Excel installed on your machine to use this. And I've downloaded one already here. So this is what it looks like when it opens. You may have to, enable content and enable editing and all of that. And then just give it a few seconds because it's going to bring in the latest exchange rates for you, which is really cool. So you don't have to go find the exchange rate. You don't have to go Google that. It will bring it in for you. Basically, what you use this tool for is to estimate your retail price in a market using your FOB price. And we've got plenty of markets here. And we are trying to add to it as we go along. We're always editing it. If you have any feedback for us, if you're in market and you see something that doesn't quite match, doesn't feel right to you, please email us because we're always trying to update this and keep it relevant. But I'm just going to use Japan as an example right now. So how you'd use it is you put in your FOB per dozen, so per case, per 9-liter case in here. So let's say 90, so that's about $10 a liter. Then it's pulled in the latest exchange rate for you, so you don't have to edit that. But you can if you want to model different exchange rates, of course. What's great about this tool is that it's completely editable. So if you want to adjust any of these things, go ahead and do it. If you want to add things, change your margin, etc., do that. This is just an estimate here of freight and insurance costs. Again, change it if you feel it's different. That brings you to your CIF price then, so your FOB plus freight and insurance, that's your CIF. The import tariff, which is 0 for bottled wine into Japan. For Australian wine, you got your liquor tax, consumption tax, recycling fees. So for all these markets, this is obviously very different. And then that brings you to your distributor price per dozen per bottle. There's a margin. And then again, a wholesale price per dozen per bottle and a retail margin, which brings you to your retail price, right? And so it just helps you model different scenarios and think about what sort of price point you want to end up in. And there'll be some notes down here at the bottom as well, just explaining some of the assumptions we've used. But what you can use this for, and that you can use it for a bit of market research as well. So say you're looking at a market and you're not sure where to price your wine. You can use this to, in conjunction with other websites online, to sort of find where you should position yourself. So one of the sites you could use is Wine Searcher, for instance. I've just put in Australia here as just a general search. And this is currently on Japan. You can change that, and it's on the yen. You can change that as well. So what you get is just heaps and heaps of SKUs that are being sold in Japan currently. You can filter on the year as well. But it gives you the prices that they're listed at. So it just helps you if you're new to a market or just do some pre-research before you head to the market. Obviously getting into the market and on the ground is the best way. But maybe you want to do some pre-research before you head over, or you can't. You can just have a look here and get an idea of how things are being priced. So have a think about what brand that you might want to position yourself close to, and you can do some research that way. So that's just another thing that you can do with all the information that you're getting from these tools. Let me just go back to our website here quickly. because I've lost the dashboards and calculators page. Okay. So we've now gone through sort of the tools you've got for exports that you've got in your toolbox. Now, something that we've recently released just in the last few months is the domestic sales dashboard. So this brings together everything we've got on the domestic market. And it is very new, so you may not have seen it before. Basically, in the last 3 years, our team has been working on the Improving Market Transparency project, which had a raft of things underneath it. But one of the things that we worked on was improving the knowledge and transparency on domestic sales, wine sales, right? And so this dashboard is really a product of that. It pulls together some new data sources that we never had access to before. It reveals some things that we couldn't share outside of Wine Australia before. So just brings all of that together in one place for you. Again, freely accessible. You don't have to log in to access this. So when you get to it, the first page is the overview page. Looks very much like the Market Explorer, and that's because it is IWSR data that you start off on. But there's a few more details here than are in the Market Explorer. So you've got the top 5 imported origins over time, how they're doing. And you've got also still, sparkling, and fortified wine, and you can have a look at the forecast there on how those are expected to grow or not grow. And the other thing that you can do on this page is you can actually flip these price segment charts into value instead. I know that some people really like to look at value rather than volume. So if you want to flip these two charts to look at value, you can do that. Moving on to the wholesale page, and this is where you get the data from our production, sales, and inventory survey that Wine Australia runs every year. So this is data from Australian wineries only. The first page was total wine consumption in Australia, so including imports. This is just from Australian wineries here. And what you can see here is sales on the domestic market, how they're going, red and white. You can also see the stocks to sales ratio. So this is total sales, so including exports versus inventory. You can see how that stock to sales ratio for red is coming down. And there's this cool little chart, which is a really good indicator to see whether we're in balance or not as far as demand versus supply of wine in Australia. So if you hover over one of these columns, you can see in that year how much wine was produced, how much we sold on the domestic market, how much was sold in exports, and then production minus those total sales, where that ends up. And so you can see that after the 2021 big vintage, that we were very above, and now the last 2 years that sales have exceeded production. So, so good to see there. If you're a grape grower and liters don't mean as much to you maybe, and you'd like to just see it in tons equivalent, you can flip these two right-hand charts to go into tons as well. And that's just using a 700 liters per ton extraction rate. So just gives you, obviously the trend is exactly the same, but just gives it to you in tons instead, so that you can have a look at that. All right, and then we've got a retail page, which is Circana data. So that's point of sale scan data here in Australia, so domestic retail outlets. And it just gives you an idea of the share of sales volume by variety, the top varieties, and how that's changing, and also the average value and how that's changing. And it's looking at commercial versus premium wine as well. And then we've also got consumers. So this is 2 new sets of data that we've got on this page here, which is really exciting that we're able to share that with you. The first new data source that's on here is Growth Scope, and that's based on consumer surveys, which basically asks a consumer, what did you consume on your last occasion, your consumption occasion? What was it? You know, obviously it records their age and everything like that. What was the occasion? Were you eating a meal? Were you relaxing? What color of wine was it, and what variety. It asks a lot more than that, but that's what we've got here on the page. And so you can see some really interesting trends or things that you probably think are intuitive anyway, but it's really good to have the data to back you up. So when you're looking at the consumption occasions, right, by wine style, you can see that, of course, sparkling over indexes when you're catching up with friends, which makes sense. And that red wine is actually the more popular style when eating a main meal and relaxing at home. So that makes sense, but it's really nice to have data to back that up, right? And you can see some interesting things as far as variety trends as well. So you can see French champagne has increased a few ranks. This is rank of consumption. You see that French champagne has increased a couple spots in the last couple of years. You can see the decline of Merlot, really, from 7th to 12th spot. You can see that Chardonnay just in the last few months has overtaken sparkling white. And you can see that Shiraz, Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon are all the top three and have been the top three for a long time, right? So it just gives you an indication of what consumers are drinking. And you get, average number of times per month that they're drinking as well, and how much on each of those occasions they are drinking. So the number of servings as well. And lastly, the last set of data that we've got on here is on the on-premise. So this is in bars, restaurants, and clubs, and it's just showing how wine is doing in relation to beer and spirits as well. And that'll get updated every 6 months for you. Right? So that's the domestic sales dashboard, and I'm just going to show you one last dashboard before we stop for questions. So have a think about if there's anything that you'd like to ask me before we log off. And that's the vintage survey dashboard. So this was built at the same time as the export dashboard, so it's been around for a little while now. This has all of our crush data from the National Vintage Survey that we collect every year. And it's now got 10 years worth of data in it. So lots and lots to explore on here. The overview page, you can get, a snapshot for your state, for instance. So say we want to look at Tasmania, we can do that, have a look, see what the trend is for Tasmanian crush and value. But what I wanted to show you here is if you're telling your brand story and you want to show, what region you come from, the characteristics of that wine region, this is a really good snapshot here. So what you can do is you can filter on a region or a zone as well. So say we're from McLaren Vale. You can search for it like that and click on it. And now you've got a nice little snapshot of McLaren Vale. You can see the varietal profile and by ownership, by color, and the varieties as well, average purchase value by varieties as well. So it's just a nice little snapshot. You can do it by volume or value, and you can print this and take it away with you, Now, if you want to have a little bit of a deeper look, go to the region table and you can... again, the region will carry over from the previous page, so you can change that if you want, but we're looking at McLaren Vale here. And what you can do, just like in the Market Explorer, you can use the columns to filter this, to sort it. So say you want to look at what are the top varieties being sold, so being crushed from McLaren Vale. You've got your total crush and you've got an average value per ton here as well. So you can filter and have a look at what's getting the highest price. These are all the reds. You scroll down, you get to the whites. And the other thing you can do is use the variety table. So say you're really interested in a certain variety. So say you're, one of your hero varieties that you've got, you want to know more about it so you can tell a better story about Australian Pinot Noir, say. So we've got red here. You can either search for it or you can use the arrows to find the varieties. Use these arrows here. We're going to go to Pinot Noir and we're going to have a look and we're going to go, okay, I want to know what are the biggest regions that are producing Pinot Noir. let's use this and sort it. You can see, of course, the Riverland, Tasmania, Adelaide Hills are your top 3 regions. But then I want to know, okay, I want to know what's the highest average purchase value. That's Mornington Peninsula, followed by Geelong, Tasmania. And what you can do is to filter this down a little bit more. You can maybe go to your state and have a look as well. And you get totals down the bottom as well, if that helps you. So that is the Vintage Survey dashboard. Again, if you have any questions, we can open that up now. And if we don't get to them, I'm happy to do, separate sessions as far as tutorials and things like that as well. So.
Great. Thank you so much, Angelica. Please, everybody, pop your questions into the Q&A section. But in a moment, Alex will just bring up quickly a little webinar poll. So while everyone's typing their questions, a little poll will just come up just to say how interesting or relevant was this webinar for you today. So if you just score it, either 1 was not at all, right up to 5, which was highly relevant, that would be great. So when that comes up, please just do that. It's up on your screen now, but in the meantime, we had a question from Russ who asked, Angelica, is there any information on certified organic vineyard plantings in Australia in 2025?
The short answer, no. I wish. As far as vineyard plantings, one of the projects that we are working on is, and I'm sure you might have heard a bit about it, it's the National Vineyard Register. That is a project that's going on right now. We're working on kind of scoping the build of that, and then we'll soon be going into the actual build of it. And that will then open up a lot of opportunity as far as organic sustainability, all of that stuff, and being able to register that sort of thing. But yeah, first we have to kind of get the register going, right? To have something to build that on top of. So no is the answer right now, but hopefully it's not too far away.
Great. Just jumping back to the FOB dashboard, I was just wondering, once somebody downloads it, like how frequently would you recommend that you're downloading it again? Because obviously things are updating, but once you download it, you tend to use it, wherever you've got it saved.
Yeah, I'd go back maybe every 6 months at least, and get a new one. If you know that there's been a big change, say, for instance, the US tariff, it happened in April, or, the changes to the alcohol duties in the UK, we do try to put those in pretty soon after they come into force. So if you know something big like that has changed, just go back to the page and download it again. But I'd say maybe every 6 months, check back. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There's still no other questions in the Q&A box. So I've got a couple of other questions that I'll ask, and then while we're waiting to see if anyone else has got anything to say, but I think you've been very thorough. That's probably why. Like a couple of months ago, we looked at the data from EDG. So Endeavour shared some data. Is that actually, is their scan data included in that scan data, the retail scan data?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's so Circana, I believe they have a data sharing agreement. And I think they do sort of they get that data, but then they use that to model as well. So it is definitely included in there, but as to what degree, obviously there's a lot more. There's a lot of other retailers in there as well, so it's not going to be exactly the same.
So it might be more broader data because it's a larger.
It is more broader data, exactly. Yeah, because it's across. It's basically modeling the entire off-premise for Australia, whereas obviously EDG would just be them. Yeah.
There's another question. There's obviously some growers and things on or viticulturists on the chat. Is there any data collected or indexes on types of technology used in vineyard operations, harvesting methods, pruning, that kind of thing? So we might be going back to the first dashboard you were showing on maybe grape cost calculations.
The grape cost calculator. Yeah. That is based on some very thorough research that we did as far as the costs of using certain hand pruning versus machine pruning, all that kind of harvesting. I mean, we will update those costs as we get more information as it updates. But as far as what technologies are being used and such, it doesn't really go into that level of detail. That's not really what the tool is for. That's more a question, I think, for the research team, as far as, how technologies are progressing in the vineyard. So we have used estimates to obviously estimate those costs. But as far as, how things are progressing as far as technologies, kind of goes beyond the remit of these tools here.
I mean, I've played around on the dashboard before, and then on the in the vintage survey data, I wonder, is there what's the easiest way if you wanted to compare the current year to maybe 5 years ago? Would you just have to download the data separately and do that manually, or is there a way that you can compare data from two and graph it on the tool?
It depends on what you're wanting to look at. I mean, we do have on the overview page and the regional snapshot page, we do have these over time charts. So if you wanted to look at, this is obviously on Tasmania at the moment. If you wanted to look at just red wine, for instance, you could filter on that and have a look at red grapes, how that, what the trend is there. So it depends, you can use the filters to your advantage. Just depends on what you want to look at, I guess. Most of the time it is possible to do it using this, and then you can download the data from there.
Yeah. Okay. Terry's asked, is there any future plans in terms of breaking down the off-premise market share by major market share, i.e. EDG, Coles, Audi, and independents?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. It's not something that we have access to, unfortunately. You'd have to.
It's probably because the data sharing agreements between
exactly. I mean, we're very lucky.
Because the idea is that it's aggregated up so that there's no disclosure of giving private information away.
Yeah, you won't get that from somebody like Circana. I think there are companies out there that do estimate, the different shares. It's not something we have. And I mean, we are very lucky to now just being able to share that Circana data that I showed you on the domestic sales dashboard. That is completely new. We haven't been able to do that before. So the fact that we're able to just show you, the volume share and the average price of the key varieties, that's something that we've been able to negotiate. So we'll keep, that's transparency of the domestic market is something that we, still needs to be worked on. But as far as, how the retailers break down, we don't have that information.
Right. And somebody just wants you to clarify what IWSR data is.
Okay, so IWSR is a market research firm. It used to stand for the International Wine and Spirit Record, but they're now just known as the IWSR. That is consumption data. So they do estimates every year on how much wine is being consumed by market, by color, by country of origin, price point, etc. So they're a big firm for that. We have a license to use their data in the Market Explorer. So that's how we have access to that. But yes, they're a really good resource as far as how wine is doing, how alcohol is doing really in key markets.
I mean, I think one of the comments I'd make is that usually people have to buy WSR data, don't they? So they might come out with a report and you'll see a media release about it and you'll click on it and then it'll be like, oh, this is $1,000 to download or whatever. So I guess getting access to some of that data, even if it's not exactly what you want, is incredibly beneficial because otherwise you would need to pay for it separately.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
yeah,
And we
they're
also
doing
actually subscribe to a few of their landscape reports, which are in-depth consumer insight reports. And we get 4 different markets every year from them that you can go to our website and get if you've got your LevyPair login, you can get those. So we cover 4 different markets every year. So you can download those reports. So yeah, they would go for thousands of dollars otherwise. So you should have a look at them if you haven't.
Oh, that's fantastic. This is your last chance, people, to ask a question quickly in the chat box in the Q&A box if you've got any last questions. But I guess everyone's thinking, oh, I know I can ask Angelica or one of the team through that book a session. So they're probably thinking there's not as much urgency to ask it here if they've got an in-depth question.
Yes,
Um,
please reach out.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's been really fantastic. I think these are tools. What I like to see is that they're tools for marketers and producers alike. So they've got lots of different data there that you could really do some very good planning, very beneficial. So we thank you very much for your time, Angelica, today. It's been really fantastic. You've been a great speaker and you've explained things really, really well. And it's been great to see you actually manipulating the data and having a look at it in front of us. And we know how an expert can do it, and it helps us do it better. So we will be wrapping up today. Our next webinar is on the 11th of November. It's the last one for 2025. It's on the topic of trade connections, engaging buyers in the on and off trade. And this one actually came out of the fact that we arranged these speakers to speak in Victoria, and we realised that there was a national appetite for it. So we've decided to make it a webinar instead. So make sure you sign up for that. That, unlike this one, is one that you do need to pay for, unless you're lucky enough to be a member of WCA, in which case you get access to all of our webinars for free. So if you aren't a member, perhaps think about joining. And if you have any suggestions on other webinar topics that you'd like us to cover, please email us at wca@winecommunicators.com.au, and Alex will receive your email. So that's pretty much it for today. Look, Julian's actually managed to get a squeeze in one last question. For a wine technology developer, neither a wine producer or a levy player, is there a way to access login required data?
Now you have to be a levy payer or an exporter. So you have to have that ABN from a wine producing or a grape levy payer ID, or as an exporter. So you have to pay for your export license, and then you can sign up to the website. So unfortunately, there are some reports that you can pay to get access to. It really depends on the data sharing contracts that we've got. There are some reports that we can sell on. But as far as access to our dashboards, that is really, well, it's really only in the Market Explorer that is locked down, that you have to be a levy payer or exporter to get to that.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Great to see everyone. And hopefully we see you at the next webinar, and ask questions of Angelica's team via her booking sessions. See you later. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.